Hello, welcome to Nursing Tutorials with Joel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. In today's video, we'll be looking at the neuron, which forms the genesis of the nervous system. The nervous system is one important system in the body that helps us perceive, that we receive information through sight, smell, or taste and other senses. Then we are also able to understand what we receive, and the nervous system helps us also to make movements it sends different informations to different parts of the body. It's like a control system. I call it the boss of all systems. So there are two basic structures that make up, or cells that make up, the nervous system. We have the neurons and we have the glial cells, or the neuroglia. In today's video, we'll be looking at the neurons. What are the parts of the neurons? What are the types of neurons we have? What are the functions of the neurons? And other things we'll be looking at as well. Thank you as we begin. Basically, the neuron is the functional unit of the nervous system. The neuron is an excitable cell, meaning that it can be stimulated, and based on its excitability, movement occurs. Certain things are, signals are received, informations are perceived, and certain other nervous functions take place as a result of this neuron. So it is good, before we study other parts of the nervous system, it's good to look at what cell makes up the brain, what cell makes up the spinal cord, what cell makes up the nerves, what's the basic cell, and that's called the neuron. Now, there are facts that we will look at concerning the neuron. First of all, the body is made up of billions of neurons, so many billions, especially the nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord and the rest. Deep research has shown that the brain is made up of approximately 100 billion neurons, while the spinal cord is made up of about 13.5 billion neurons. If you look at the difference, the proportion, you will know that the brain has a lot of function to do, so much functions to do, and we'll be looking at that in subsequent videos. So the neurons are so much in the body. And another interesting fact about neurons is that all the neurons, majority of the neurons are present at birth, meaning that we as human beings, when we are giving birth to, our neurons are already there. It's only in few cases where according to recent research, it's only in few cases where you have a reproduction of new neurons. For example, recent studies has shown that the hippocampus, which is a part of the brain, produces neuron, a little portion of neuron, just in an insignificant amount, and the hippocampus deals with memory. So that's about that. So basically, most of the neurons in our body are present at birth. And another interesting fact about this is that at the age of 20 years, studies have shown that these neurons begin to lose them gradually. They begin to degenerate gradually. It's at a very slow process. And by the age of 65, 70, an individual have lost practically 1/10 of the neurons in the body. So another thing also is that the neurons they don't undergo mitosis, and they don't undergo replacements. We all know mitosis is one of the processes that is undergone by most cells in the body for reproduction. The neurons don't undergo mitosis. However, also, they don't undergo replacement. When a neuron is damaged, it is damaged. It's not replaced, and that is why injuries like head injury, spinal cord injury, they are very, very serious injuries. Why? Because such an individual might not get his or herself again, might not have those neurons replaced. So having known these facts, let's quickly look at the structure of the neuron. The neuron is basically made up of three parts. We have the dendrites, as we can see over here. We have the cell body, and we have the axon. So we have these parts that makes up the neuron. This diagram is a simple diagram, a basic diagram, and the labelings are very, very clear. For an exam condition, this will go a long way. So basically, the dendrites, the cell body, and the axon. Now let's take a look at the dendrites. The dendrites are short processes or extensions that extend from the cell body, from different parts of the cell body. Their major function is that they serve as the input part of the neuron, meaning that whatsoever information, whatsoever impulse, whatsoever signal is coming to this neuron, it passes through the dendrites. The dendrites receives such information and sends it to the cell body. So the dendrites in some neurons could be much, while in other neurons you might just have one or two dendrites, while in some other neurons there might not be dendrites at all. We are going to look at the classifications of neurons later. Now, that's that about the dendrite. It serves as an input. Any information coming from outside or coming from the environment pass through the dendrites and move into the cell. The next part is the cell body. This part is the part of the neuron that houses the nucleus, and you all know that the nucleus contains the genetic information of the neuron. So the cell body, also another function of the cell body is a production of protein. That's protein synthesis through the endoplasmic reticulum. So the cell body has a major function of, it's like a control function in a way for the neuron, and it also receives information from the dendrites and sends it to the axon. So whatever signals, whatever impulses that are coming from the exterior passes through the dendrites and move into the cell body. As you can see, this space here is called the cytoplasm of the cell body. Information is processed here and sent to the axon. That's that about the cell body. Now, one interesting thing about the cell body is that different neurons could make up a collection of cell bodies. Maybe you have, let's say in the brain now, you have many neurons, maybe close to each other, and that collection of cell body in the central nervous system is called nuclei, or say nucleus. Nuclei is a plural. So in case maybe you're reading and you see somewhere they mention nuclei, definitely it's in different parts of the central nervous system. That nuclei is a collection of cell bodies in the central nervous system, while in the peripheral nervous system, the collection of cell bodies is called ganglion. This is singular, while for plural it is called ganglia. Ganglia. Yeah, this is just by the way. So nuclei is a collection of cell bodies in the central nervous system, while ganglion is a collection of cell bodies in the peripheral nervous system. Now let's look at the axon. The axon is a single long extension of the cell body, and it acts as an output of the neuron. The axon is usually single, just one. While you have so many dendrites, you only have one axon. No matter the type of neuron, you just have one single axon. At this junction where you have the cell body, where you have the branching off of the axon from the cell body, that point is called axonal hillock. In the diagram, it is labeled like that, the axonal hillock. Then after that, we also discovered that the axon is wrapped with different sheets, is surrounded with series of sheets, and those sheets are called myelin sheets. What's the function of myelin sheets? The function of myelin sheets is to increase the speed of impulses traveling through the axon. So any neuron that has myelin, which is called myelinated neuron, impulses travel faster as compared to a non-myelinated neuron. So if this is a neuron and it has myelin, as we can see here, a neuron that has myelin sheets is called myelinated neuron, while the neuron without myelin sheet is called non-myelinated neuron. This myelin sheet is an insulated fatty substance. It's an insulated fatty substance that makes it able to increase the rate of flow of impulses through the axon. Now, in between two myelin sheets, we have a gap there which is called node of Ranvier. The gap is called node of Ranvier, and discovered that this gap helps to prevent contact between two myelin sheets. So that's it about the axon. Now, the distal part of the axon, you have some branches which ends at the synaptic terminal, or the axonal, also called the axonal terminal, or also called terminal buds. Any of this name could go for it. These buds contain neurotransmitters. So as you see these circles, they are called a synaptic terminal. So these terminal buds contain what is called neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemical that either stimulates another neuron or inhibits the actions of such neuron. So different neurotransmitters are located at the terminal buds, and based on the type of signal that is passed to the terminal buds, the neurotransmitters are released into this space, which is called the synaptic cleft. The synaptic space, or synaptic cleft. Alright, that's that about the neuron. That's the parts of the neuron. Now we'll be looking at the types of neuron and some other things. Now we'll be looking at the classification of neurons. Basically, we can classify neurons based on their structure, which is the structural classifications. We can classify them based on their function, which is the functional classification. So, first of all, we'll be looking at the structural classifications. Now, under the structural classifications, we have unipolar neurons, we have pseudo-unipolar neurons, we have bipolar neurons, and we have multipolar neurons. Now, the unipolar neurons are neurons that are without a dendrite or any dendrites. They don't have any dendrites, but they have one axon. So a unipolar neuron has one cell body and an axon. The next type of neuron under the structural classification is the pseudo-unipolar neuron. Now, this pseudo-unipolar neuron still has one axon and one cell body without a dendrite. However, due to the presence of the cell body located at the center of the axon is divided into two branches. Thus, it is looking like a bipolar neuron, but it is not. Instead, it is a false unipolar neuron. Now we have the bipolar neuron. The bipolar neuron has one cell body, one axon, and only one dendrite. So bipolar meaning two poles. So you have one cell body, one dendrite at this end, and you also have one axon at this other end with the cell body in the middle. That's the bipolar neuron. Then you have multipolar, which is the most abundant type of neuron in the body. With the multipolar has one axon, one cell body, and different short processes, that is different dendrites. So the multipolar is the most abundant in the body. Is made up of plenty or many dendrites, one single axon, and one cell body. Now the unipolar neuron is found majorly in the brain, in the cochlear nucleus. Majorly, the pseudo-unipolar neuron is found in sensory neurons. So, and the sensory neurons makes up sensory nerves. So you have in the sensory neurons, most of the neurons are made up of pseudo-unipolar neurons. The next is the bipolar neuron, which is located majorly at the retina, that's at the eyes. The bipolar neuron, that's this location. Then you have the multipolar, which is mostly found in the motor neurons. Most motor neurons are made up of the multipolar. The next classification is based on the functions of the neurons. We have sensory neurons, which are responsible for sending information or sending signals and impulses to the central nervous system, while the motor neurons, carry out these impulses and in transmissions to effector organs, to glands, to muscles. The next is the motor neurons that receives information from the central nervous system and sends them to the effector organs, to muscles, to glands, and others, where their actions are emitted or carried out. The next neuron is the intermediate neuron. This neuron connects directly to another neuron. It's like, for example, majorly they are found in the spinal cord, like in a reflex action where impulses are sent from the exterior straight to the spinal cord without going to the brain. The informations are sent back to the effector organ. For example, if there is a tea here and it's very, very hot, and I put my finger into that tea, and without even thinking, my finger itself will remove. That's a reflex action. Why? Because the body is trying to prevent burns from occurring. And this happens because some of these intermediate neurons send impulse to themselves. So there are intermediate neurons that connect to each other. Now that's that about the types of neuron. Another type of neuron is based on the presence of myelin sheath, just as we saw previously. So we have myelinated neurons and non-myelinated neurons. Definitely impulses will travel faster in myelinated neurons than in non-myelinated neurons. The next we'll look at is synapse. Synapse is the junction between one neuron and the other neuron. The neuron, this, for example, like this first neuron here, we can call it a presynaptic neuron, while we have the postsynaptic neuron as the next neuron. In between them is a space, and that space is called synaptic cleft. Synaptic cleft. So this junction between the presynaptic neuron and the postsynaptic neuron is called synaptic cleft. When information or signals or transmissions or impulses, either chemical or electrical, leaves the neuron, they first of all get into the synapse, and from the synapse they are picked up by the dendrites of the postsynaptic neurons. This is made possible by the presence of neurotransmitters, and there are different types of neurotransmitters in the body. So we are going to stop here for today, and we've looked at the neuron. This is basically most of the information you need about the neuron. For more information, more videos, subsequent learnings, please subscribe to this channel and like the video, watch and share. Thanks for listening. Do have a wonderful day.